In tonight, I wanted to address the latest in the Naziah Harris case, and I wanted to address a few things, help everybody understand what's going on with her case, what we can all expect as this case makes its way through the criminal justice system. Now, I noticed, and again, I love all the enthusiasm in this case. I love the fact that everybody's showing up, but I noticed that there seems to be a little bit of a misunderstanding with the timing of this case, how this is going to work, and I want to get through all of that. Plus, I have the coveted footage, some of the coveted footage, highlights at least. We're going to watch a news broadcast who actually did get some footage of the Jarvis Butts appearance in court, and talks about what happened in court yesterday, as well as what the future holds. As far as what's going to be happening, what's the next steps. We're going to get into all of that so that everybody has a full and clear understanding, if you're following this case, what you can anticipate as we move forward. It's not going to be a long video, but I just wanted to address all these things because I know there is a tremendous amount of interest in this case and a tremendous amount of interest in getting justice for this young lady right here next to me. So without further ado, let's jump into this. Let's get into this important topic, and let's talk about it. So first off, yesterday a hearing was held. A lot of confusion was surrounding that. Why did we have a preliminary hearing? How did we get to the next phase here? What was going on? Why didn't it go right to trial? Well, what you need to understand is when you have felony charges, and in this case, capital felony charges, you're going to end up in the lower court. In this case, it was, I believe, the district court is the way it works in Michigan. They were in the district court where he had what's called a preliminary hearing. Now, the preliminary hearing is in lieu of going to the grand jury. A grand jury is going to be a group of people. Normally, it's about 20 people, 25 individuals, and they will have witnesses come before them. They'll have the prosecutor come before them and talk to them about the case. The prosecutor can what they call proffer testimony, or or facts of the case to them, where he can actually speak about what they have, and then the prosecutor will ask the grand jury to enter in what's called a true bill or an indictment, and the case can proceed that way. Or, as in this case, a preliminary hearing was requested, or what they call a preliminary examination, and that's what we had for 4 days, where the prosecutor puts on what almost appears to be a mini trial. They don't have opening statements or anything like that. They'll get right into where the prosecution has to put on a case, and they've got to demonstrate that they have probable cause to proceed with the case and bound the case into district court, or circuit court, to circuit court for trial. Now, that does not mean trial happens right away. That means just that he'll be eligible for trial. He can be held in jail until the trial takes place. But it's a requirement that they make a showing in court, that his lawyers get to examine witnesses, cross-examine witnesses, and then they get to make final arguments like we saw, where either side argues what they believe was proved or wasn't proved in the hearing and why they believe the case should or should not continue. So what we saw was a preliminary examination. It was a long one. Normally, these don't take more than a few hours. A lot of times they will call maybe an investigator. They might call another witness or two, and then it gets bound over. In this case, it was complicated by the fact that this young lady's never been found. So the state had to make a showing that she died. And that is a burden that normally is not. That made this much more complicated and a much more difficult burden for the state to have to overcome in order to bound Jarvis Butts over for trial in the case. So that's why we saw a 4-day trial. That's why we saw almost 21 witnesses testify in the case. Now, it also gives the opportunity for cross-examination of witnesses. It gives the defense a good preview of the case, and it gives the defense now witness testimony to come back with and lock people into stories and lock people into events. And it's actually a very helpful tool for the defense when these preliminary examinations happen. Now, On the other hand, too, as we saw the grandmother and the aunt testify, where we believe they should be held accountable. It also allowed the prosecution to require them to come in and testify, lock in the stories, and get cross-examined. And it also allows for the potential down the road, if any of these witnesses come up missing, since Jarvis Butts had the opportunity to confront these witnesses, they can be used later on at trial if for some reason they can't show up, like some of the baby mamas that showed up in there, some of the friends, like Cordell. If something happened to Cordell and he couldn't show up, we have his testimony now. They have his testimony in court. So it allowed for a lot of good things to happen in terms of all of that. So that's what we saw. So what happened next, which is what happened after the judge made her finding of probable cause, and what happened yesterday is the case was bound over to circuit court now to begin the trial process. And unfortunately, this is where kind of I think there was some confusion. Many people thought yesterday the trial was going to be happening, and that's not the case. What is happening now is the process of getting to trial begins, and the pretrial process begins, and that could last anywhere from 6 months to it could last a multiple of years. Take, for instance, the YNW Melly case, where that case has been working its way through the system for nearly 4 to 5 years. Take the Ty Tucker case, which is a case I've covered on here down in Florida. That took 7 years before it got resolved for him, and it took nearly 6 years before it ever saw trial. Take the Crumley case. That case took the Crumley parents nearly 18 months, and that's a Michigan case. It took 18 months for it to make it to trial. So there's going to be a sizable amount of time before we see Jarvis Butts going to trial, and with all the complications of not having a body, text messages, further DNA testing and things that might have to be done, it's going to be a little while before we see Jarvis Butts going to trial. Now, what's going to happen is there's a scheduling conference that's set up for the 11th of March, as you're going to hear. And at that time, they will lay out a pretrial schedule, or at least a preliminary pretrial schedule, where there will be hearings scheduled, there will be meetings, additional meetings, and there will be a tentative trial date just to kind of set the goal of when they hope to bring this thing to trial. Now, also understand Jarvis Butts has 3 other pending cases that are pending in regards to other things that he's done of inappropriateness with minors. So those are also working their way through, and those will not be handled at the same time that this case is. So all of that is going to be, contributing to this thing taking a little while before it actually gets to trial, which I know everybody wants a trial. Everybody wants to see justice for this young lady. And of course, also, it could even be further complicated if they were to find her body at some point. It would further delay and complicate this thing. Now, it's also a possibility that Jarvis Butts meets with his attorneys and decides to try to work out some form of a plea bargain that would give him an opportunity to go before parole board and an opportunity to potentially get out of prison at some point in his life. And he would try to work out some sort of a deal. And in that case, we would never see a trial. Now, I don't really believe that's going to happen in this case because I think he's going to try to fight this thing, but we'll see what happens. But the point is that there will be no trial, unfortunately, for this case for the near future. At least at the earliest, I would see the trial happening might be the fall, might be towards the end of the year at the very earliest. And that's if things lined up perfectly and got rushed through and his attorneys just kind of laid down and didn't raise any of the numerous legal issues that will be raised leading up to this trial, especially with it being a trial with digital evidence, cell phone evidence, and they're going to have hearings on the admissibility of all of that. Even though we heard some of it, not all of that's going to make it to the jury, and there's going to be a circuit court judge who's going to have to go through all of it and who's going to have to decide what can go to the jury, what can't go to the jury, what's allowed and what isn't. And it's going to be, it's going to be a very arduous and very lengthy pretrial process to get this case to the jury. So just be aware of that. Now, that doesn't mean the coverage stops. It doesn't mean we don't have things to talk about. That doesn't mean there won't be news. And we will be talking about it and covering it all right here as anything comes out about this case, because it has definitely gained my interest and my attention in wanting to see how this case plays out and make sure that it's at the forefront and make sure that we are getting this case out to the masses. Now, that brings us to, let's talk about what happened yesterday. And I have a news report. I don't have the footage. I don't have the, a live footage, but I have footage from a news organization who was present and had a reporter in there who was capturing scenes from this. So give me one moment here. Let's pull this up and let's take a look at this.
Jarvis Butts, the Detroit man charged with murdering 13-year-old Neziah Harris, he appeared in court for the first time since his case was bounded over for trial. CBS News Detroit's Jack Springate sat on today's proceedings to tell us everything that happened in court today.
Well, today's hearing was more procedural than informative, but it did set a timetable for some of the next steps in this trial. The biggest development arguably happened outside the courthouse, and that was learning how much attention Neziah's story's been getting since last week's preliminary hearing. Butts entered a not guilty plea before the court scheduled a calendar conference set for March 7th at 9 a.m. That's when deadlines to file motions, motion hearing dates, and potential trial dates will be set. One of Neziah's adult cousins and staunchest advocates said her story has taken off ever since the preliminary hearing.
There are a few celebrities that have reached out. It's reached some very top tier platforms. So I'm hoping that, it moves in the right direction that it needs to go on.
Roxy says one of these celebrities was Detroit's very own Skilla Baby, who not only said he'd cover the cost to throw a community gathering to honor Neziah's life, but he's also changed his profile picture to this photo of her.
I'm very thankful that Skilla Baby decided to, step up to the plate and take care of everything. And it's just awesome how the community is coming together all behind Neziah.
Roxy told me her reaction to much of the online chatter that sided with Judge Aaliyah Sabri's observation that those caring for Neziah when she was abused didn't do enough to protect her.
Accountability matters. It's some things that you can be able to forgive your family members for, and this is just one of those things that I just personally can't. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, and everyone involved in it needs to take accountability.
Roxy says she would have never let this happen if she were still living in Detroit 1 year ago. Again, Butts will be back in court on March 7th for that calendar conference, and you can continue to follow along this case with us here at CBS News Detroit as we bring you real-time updates as they happen. For now, reporting in Detroit, I'm Jack Springate, CBS News Detroit.
All right, so you guys heard that. So it's the 7th, I apologize, not the 11th of March when he'll be back in court. But as you heard there, he appeared in court. There is obviously a tremendous amount of support that's been developing on this case. So that is very good news for the case, and hopefully we can do our part here, keeping it in the news. But he'll be appearing in court on the 7th of March, and as was noted in the newscast there, that'll be the time. Trial will be scheduled, a pretrial hearing period will be scheduled. So all of that will be going on, and we will have a better idea of what things are going to be looking like. But like I said, having been around the criminal justice system for a while here now, it's going to take a little while. So even once we get that set up, this is when the real work gets started. This is when the attorneys are going to be going. And remember, he's got 3 other pending cases, so it's going to take its time. However, I am quite certain, given the nature of this case, this will be the priority case that will move forward first, although there's another case that's been going on, if you go on the docket and look, that has already moved towards and into the pretrial phase. But we'll see what happens. So that's where we stand, guys. I wanted to just kind of check in here with everything, give that explanation, because it seemed like there was some confusion, and I understand it because a lot of people aren't familiar with how these things work until they either have, unfortunately, somebody close or personal or themselves involved in the criminal justice system, or you get involved in following a case like this and there's confusion. So anyways, we're going to do our part here. We're going to keep reporting on this. I'm going to keep bringing to you the latest. So if you tune in here, check it out. I'll be dropping links and things as things come in. We'll do some lives on it. We'll readdress some of the testimony and some of the things that came up in that hearing. We'll continue talking about it, and I'll continue putting this out for people to see because it's very important. And of course, as they noted there, one of the things we want to see is an expansion in this case of holding people accountable, because there are more people than Jarvis Butts. Jarvis Butts was the monster, but there are people that allowed that monster to gain access, and they should be held accountable too. And that's what we're going to try to do here, hopefully, in bringing attention to this case and force those authorities to make sure that they are expanding their investigation and increasing the pressure on them to look into the other people that should be held accountable for this. So, guys, with that said, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful. Put any questions you have in the comments. I can do another video. Any questions you have about the process, any questions you have about what you're seeing, what's next, let me know, and I'll certainly try to answer it for you. Appreciate everybody showing up, everybody stopping by the lives to check on things, and I will, of course, anything that's being broadcast, we will make sure it's broadcast here and that you're getting the latest on this case as it comes out. So with that said, guys, very much appreciate all of you. And until we talk again, let justice prevail for Neziah, and we will talk again very soon.
The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. Marching with a purpose, we're taking it higher. Fighting through the struggle, igniting the fire. No more silence, we'll make the noise loud. Together in this battle, standing strong and proud. Injustice fades when courage aligns. Rise up together, break the confines. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. So rise up now, it's our time to shine. Together we'll write a new paradigm. You paradigm, you paradigm. Whoa, whoa. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. Rise up now, it's our time to shine. United and free. A new paradigm, new paradigm. United and free. United and free. United and free.